Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Tiffany Maher. Tiffany Maher was born on April 29, 1973, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Her father was a college professor, and her mother, a Harvard graduate, eventually became a housewife. They had high expectations for Tiffany. Her parents set a goal for her to earn a college degree, and they worked hard to support her. Tiffany had a high IQ, and her family created a nurturing environment focused on education. As a result, she entered university, fulfilling her parents' dream for her. Tiffany has a sociable and humorous personality. She is very intelligent and friendly. Tiffany is not interested in romantic relationships. She focuses on her studies, which she enjoys very much. She feels that she has the ability to achieve great things with her intelligence, so she has chosen to postpone looking for a life partner. Tiffany is 40 years old and lives in the small town of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Although intelligent and educated, she is still single and is looking for her soulmate. She has a deep affection for animals, so her friends gave her 2 cats. The cats have become an important part of Tiffany's life. She loves them dearly and treats them as if they were her own children. During this time, Tiffany served as an associate professor in the chemistry department at Northeastern State University. She was well known for her sociable and friendly nature, easily connecting with everyone. Her lectures were not only informative, but also engaging, featuring a mix of stories and jokes that kept students entertained. Her cheerful personality made her beloved by everyone in her circle. Outside of work, Tiffany enjoyed crocheting and going to karaoke with friends. She was comfortable being alone and dedicated herself to her work, becoming one of the university's leading specialists, which was greatly appreciated. Tiffany often expressed that her job brought her happiness and allowed her to grow in her field. While many of her peers were focused on starting families and having children, she concentrated on education and expanding her knowledge. The situation changed as she got older. She wanted to find a partner to help her through the tough times. To achieve this, she created a profile on a dating website, hoping to meet the person she had always secretly dreamed of. On May 31, 2013, Tiffany's best friend, Sarah, received an unexpected text message from a staff member at the university where Tiffany worked. Tiffany was scheduled to give a presentation that day, but she did not show up, which was unusual for such a responsible person. Regardless of the circumstances, she always arrived early and prepared thoroughly, so her absence was very worrying. When the head of the educational institution spoke with other teachers, it became clear that Tiffany had not appeared in the department for several days. This aroused suspicion and caused anxiety. Sarah was really worried about her friend. She tried to contact Tiffany, but couldn't get through. For days, Tiffany ignored both calls and texts. Sarah had a feeling that something was wrong, but she tried to push those worrying thoughts away. When Sarah arrived at Tiffany's house, she immediately noticed something unusual. There was a black stain, like soot, on one of the second-story windows. Tiffany's car was missing from the driveway, which was unusual because she always parked there when she came home. Sarah also noticed that a small window, which Tiffany usually left open for her cats to come and go freely, was closed. Curious, Sarah went to the window to look inside and was devastated to see Tiffany's cat lying motionless on the floor. The situation was becoming increasingly alarming. Sarah decided not to go in, stayed outside, and called the police. She called 911 and explained what she had discovered, asking them to check on Tiffany. When police arrived at the scene, they found the main door of the house unlocked, allowing them easy access inside. Inside, they witnessed a horrific scene. There were many small fires in the house that had gone out. In the bedroom, they discovered Tiffany's body lying on the bed. Surprisingly, Other than her burned legs, there were no visible injuries on Tiffany's body, and there were no defensive wounds on her hands or anywhere else on her body. After investigating the crime scene, the police determined that the fire originated in the living room and bedroom on the first floor. An object was placed under the sofa, but it did not catch fire, so the fire went out. A similar incident occurred in the bedroom, where the bottom of the bed was burned. The police who arrived at the scene discovered that several items were missing from Tiffany's home, including a laptop, a cell phone, a TV, a karaoke machine, and a car. The police concluded that this was likely a robbery. In addition, there are concerns that Tiffany may have been sexually assaulted. Suspicious marks on her underwear raise suspicion. All of these details will be collected for testing. A citywide alert was issued to begin searching for Tiffany's car, a 2011 red Ford Fiesta. Forensic experts quickly collected evidence at the crime scene, while police interviewed neighbors and people close to Tiffany. Since there were no signs of forced entry, it is believed that Tiffany knew the attacker and let him into her home willingly. Police first spoke with Tiffany's mother, Maria. She reported that she last saw her daughter on May 26, just 5 days before Tiffany was found. Maria and some relatives had attended a basketball game that day and had a good time together. Tiffany had plans to attend a date that evening, but did not share any details about the date. Maria noted that Tiffany seemed calm, untroubled, and had not received any threats. After the autopsy was completed, the medical examiner provided new information. They concluded that Tiffany died of asphyxiation, possibly from the pillowcase found at the scene. The police needed more time to investigate, but they found no signs of strangulation. Forensic experts also ruled out the possibility of death from fire because there was no smoke in Tiffany's lungs, suggesting she died before the fire broke out. It appears the killer set the fire to destroy evidence of the crime. The medical examiner estimated that Tiffany had been killed on May 26, 5 days before Sarah reported the incident to the police. The information Tiffany's mother provided about Tiffany's meeting on the day of her death seemed important. It was essential to find out who Tiffany was meeting with. The police needed to identify Tiffany's contacts and her method of communication. Tiffany's mother suggested that they investigate her office at the university, where she often spent a lot of time. At first, the office seemed unremarkable. However, police found a working computer and discovered that Tiffany had a profile on a dating website. Her best friend confirmed that Tiffany had recently been considering dating and finding a partner. Tiffany was using a popular Canadian dating website at the time. Police contacted the site's administrators to gather information about Tiffany's dating activities and messages. Since the site was based in Canada, they had to submit a request and wait for a response. Police then received a tip that led them to Tiffany's car, which had been found abandoned in the parking lot of an apartment building where her parents lived. Her parents did not mention the presence of the car, which aroused suspicion. Police interviewed them again, but her parents were completely unaware that their daughter's car was in the parking lot. After questioning, it became clear that her parents had nothing to do with the incident. It appeared that the criminal had intentionally left the stolen car near her parents' home to throw the investigation off track. The car was confiscated and sent for examination. Forensic experts examined it to find any signs of a potential thief. They discovered fingerprints on the steering wheel and DNA samples that did not belong to the Tiffany. The Canadian dating site's management has finally responded. They revealed that in early May, Tiffany created a profile and contacted multiple men at once. However, she mainly corresponded with one person. Unfortunately, this person did not provide his real name or surname. His account was Fander 1980. There were no photos or phone numbers associated with the account, which raised suspicion from the start. Sadly, the account was deactivated the same day her body was discovered. It is possible that this person was involved in the murder, but attempts to contact him have been unsuccessful. Police were able to access messages exchanged between Tiffany's account and a user named Fander1980. Their conversations lasted for a long time and did not contain any flirtatious behavior. Police reviewed Tiffany's phone records and discovered that she was frequently communicating with someone, although this person's name was not saved in her contacts. When they called the number, no one answered. However, after further analysis, they discovered that the phone number was registered to an account named Big Daddy on another website, which was the same person named Fander1980. The criminal was registered at an address in Talos, but when police arrived, they found only an abandoned commercial building. It was clear that the suspect had made efforts to conceal his identity. When the police accessed Big Daddy's account, they discovered it had been deactivated on May 2, just 2 days after the Tiffany's death. Remarkably, just 3 minutes later, he registered again under a new name. Given that several items were stolen from the Tiffany's home around the same time, the police decided to check local pawn shops. This means the thief's information may have been recorded by the pawn shop employees. The investigation included checking pawn shops in the city. It was discovered that a man named Joshua John Schneider had gone to one of those stores with Tiffany's items. Police eventually identified him as the prime suspect. 38-year-old Joshua was from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Joshua was a regular at the police station and had served time in prison for car theft and sex crimes. He was convicted of rape in 1999. Joshua often used dating websites to find lonely women to rape. While Joshua was living with his girlfriend and their 2-year-old daughter, police tried to contact him at his home address, but he was not there and could not be reached. Police spoke to Joshua's mother, who said she did not know where her son was. On July 27, 2013, the police received a tip about Joshua's whereabouts from an anonymous person. Police were then dispatched to arrest him. This led to a police chase. Joshua was in the car with Heather and child at the time. Police followed him until he reached a wooded area near Tulsa, where he abandoned the car and fled, leaving his family behind. Joshua was arrested 10 days later, and during the arrest, Tiffany's cell phone was discovered in his backpack. Despite this evidence, Joshua claimed that he knew nothing about Tiffany. However, police soon found Tiffany's laptop and other stolen items at Joshua's home, where he lived with girlfriend, Heather Black. This raised suspicions about Heather's involvement, leading to her arrest as well. The child was placed in the care of Child Protective Services, and Joshua's DNA was found on Tiffany's bedsheets and on the steering wheel of her car. This evidence linked him to the crime. The police found a text message from his mother on his phone. She had written it shortly after the police arrived at the house. She warned him that he should run away because the police were looking for him. She was then made an accomplice, as she had tried to cover up for the murderer. Joshua and his mother, Karen, were then taken to the police station. It was clear that she was trying to warn her son and help him avoid the police. It is also possible that she was involved in the crime, and those theories need to be investigated. At first, Karen claimed that she did not understand what was going on. However, when she realized that the police had strong evidence for an arrest, she became increasingly concerned. She eventually admitted that she had warned her son after the police arrived, but denied any involvement in any other wrongdoing. In July 2013, Joshua was arrested for murder, rape, robbery, and attempting to cover up the Tiffany investigation. His girlfriend, Heather, chose to cooperate with the police, and all charges against her were dropped. During the hearing, she confirmed that Joshua had confessed to Tiffany's murder and that he had tried to avoid the police, putting both her and her daughter in danger. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Joshua began to speak out. He claimed that his online relationship with Tiffany began as a simple flirtation, but they eventually decided to meet in person. On the day of their meeting, they had sex and then spent some time talking. When Joshua suddenly confessed that he was living with a girl and a child, Tiffany was furious. She then threatened to expose their relationship. This led to a fight. While trying to defend herself from Tiffany's attacks, he hit her, causing her to fall and become unconscious. There was also a fire, and he was not sure how it started. He claimed that when Joshua left the scene, Tiffany was dead. However, the prosecutor's office believed his entire story to be a lie and found it completely unbelievable. The prosecutor's office pieced together the facts of the case. On May 26, Tiffany attended a basketball game with her parents. That evening, she met Joshua at her home. When he arrived, Joshua overpowered her, attacked her, and then strangled her. He claimed that their encounter was consensual, but experts believe that was not the case. He decided to kill Tiffany and then steal her belongings. He then tried to burn the house down to destroy the evidence. However, he fled the scene before realizing that the arson had failed. It was clear that the fire was intentional. After leaving the crime scene, he stole Tiffany's car. He then used it to drive to Tiffany's parents' apartment complex. He left the car there to distract the investigation. Police discovered that some of the stolen items were sold by Joshua at pawn shops, while other items such as his phone and computer were left at his home, Joshua. The defense argued that Joshua had been abused by his father as a child, which had a negative impact on him. However, this claim is not convincing, given the horrific nature of the massacre. There is no way to justify such actions. Joshua was a danger to society and showed no remorse for his crimes. Throughout the trial, there was no sympathy for his. As a result, the jury found Joshua John Schneider guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Joshua was denied parole. He questioned the jury's ability to conduct a fair investigation and argued that Tiffany's death could have been an accident or manslaughter, since she had invited Joshua to her home. His attorney sought a retrial, believing that this would result in Joshua receiving a fair trial. The defense argued that Joshua's constitutional rights had been violated and that the investigation had been hasty in its conclusion. The defense argued that not all of the evidence from the investigation was presented to the jury. They pointed out that Joshua's girlfriend Heather was involved in the case. However, she was able to clear herself of any wrongdoing. Joshua is serving his sentence at the Davis Correctional Facility in Holdenville, Oklahoma. Despite this outcome, the lawyer continued to advocate for Joshua's case. He appealed to the jury's sympathy, highlighting that Joshua had a 2-year-old child who would be left without a parent. The defense maintained that Joshua was incapable of committing such a crime, arguing that he loved his son and did not want to return to prison and lose the chance to raise him. Once again, accusations were directed at Heather, but these efforts did not yield any changes in Joshua's sentence, which was ultimately upheld. Hey detectives, welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Valentina Tres Palacios. Valentina Tres Palacios was born on December 16, 2001, in Bogota, Colombia. She is currently studying international business and commerce, but her true passion is music. Since childhood, she has loved music and pursued this passion by studying and becoming a professional DJ. After receiving her DJ certificate, Valentina started her career in Colombia and quickly made a name for herself due to her talent and exceptional musicality. Throughout her career, she has made many friends from different countries. Valentina has had the opportunity to travel to many countries to perform and showcase her talent. She has performed with famous musicians and has toured more than 20 cities in her country. She has also participated in important international events, including festivals in Colombia, Chile, Mexico, Brazil, and Peru. With her talent and musicality, Valentina has been recognized as having a bright future ahead. She is loved and sought after across the country and regularly performs at top nightclubs. Valentina is a cheerful young woman who is always smiling and loves to party. She also maintains social media accounts where she shares her performances and updates her followers on her daily life. Valentina shares two important aspects of her life on social media: her growing popularity in the music industry and her romantic relationship with John Poulos, an American she met online in late 2021. As their relationship progressed, their communication improved significantly. Initially, Valentina was not looking for a serious relationship, but she eventually became attracted to John, and their relationship turned into a romance. John Poulos, a resident of the United States, showed a deep interest in Valentina's life. Valentina invested a lot in their relationship, and John supported her financially to help achieve her dreams. Valentina took a cosmetic course, which included hyaluronic acid injections into her lips, and later, enhancements to her cheekbones. John also recommended surgery in silicone breast implants, which significantly changed her appearance within a few months. These changes made Valentina the talk of the town. John sent her money regularly and eventually decided to marry her. John Poulos initially planned to move to Colombia to live with Valentina. However, Valentina became suspicious of the relationship because she knew that John was extremely jealous and had hired a private investigator to monitor her every contact and activity. By January 2023, John had committed to marrying Valentina and began arranging the necessary paperwork. He had also rented an apartment in the northern part of Bogota, where he planned to spend weekends with Valentina until they found a permanent place to live. However, on January 22, 2023, a garbage collector discovered a blue suitcase in a dumpster near a park in Colombia. The suitcase was taped shut and surrounded by several trash bags. When the worker opened the suitcase, they discovered the body of a woman whose head was clearly visible inside. The worker was so frightened by the discovery that he drove several blocks away before calling the police. The Capitol Police Department quickly dispatched a team to investigate the incident. The officers who arrived at the scene witnessed a horrific sight. The victim's body was found in a suitcase. After several hours of investigation, the police identified the victim as Valentina Tres Palacios. An initial examination of the body showed no signs of violence, no weapons or knives were found, and there was no dismemberment. However, after opening the suitcase, detectives discovered that the victim was wearing pajamas with a belt. This suggested that the victim may have been attacked while she was sleeping. Additionally, police found a black cardboard box inside the suitcase containing items that could help identify the body, including a student ID card, a password that the victim often used, and several other documents and personal belongings. Investigators discovered something strange among the items they collected. These types of documents are not often found in similar cases. After finding the suitcase containing the body, the police contacted Valentina's family and learned that she had attended a party with friends on Saturday, January 21st. Forensic examination results showed that she had been hit multiple times in the head. Her body was found with severe injuries, including heavy bleeding on the right side of her tongue and 5 cuts around her neck, indicating that she had been strangled. After Valentina's murder, the police began questioning her friends and relatives. They started asking questions about Valentina's relationships. As a famous DJ with a hot body, she was a very popular and well-connected person. Among those questioned, a friend of Valentina's expressed concern and suspected Valentina's boyfriend, John Poulos, of being involved in the case because of his excessively jealous behavior. At this point, suspicions turned to Valentina's boyfriend, John, and a closer investigation into him was launched. The police initially relied on surveillance cameras around John's home, examining his actions on the days of the crime. John Poulos arrived in Bogota at approximately 8:53 p.m. on January 19th. Surveillance cameras recorded him entering the apartment with a blue suitcase identical to the one used to contain Valentina's body. This information made John the first suspect to come to the attention of the police, as he was also the last person to see Valentina alive. When detectives attempted to contact John, the call was routed to voicemail. Valentina's family had appreciated John's calm and kind personality, and they did not think he was involved in this terrible crime, especially since John and Valentina had a wedding planned. Suspicions about John grew when investigators visited his rental apartment. There, they discovered that John had left and was nowhere to be found on Monday, January 23rd. It is worth noting that John Poulos deleted his social media pages early in the morning after Valentina's death, making him the only suspect at the time. Investigators analyzed surveillance camera footage in the building from Friday evening to early Sunday morning. This helped them clarify the events that took place. The Colombian police and the prosecutor's office also reviewed several hours of video footage from cameras in the area where Valentina and John were. Camera footage and WhatsApp conversations played a key role in uncovering Valentina's final hours. Valentina and John were scheduled to meet on January 20th. John arrived on the 19th, cleaned the apartment they would share, and then texted Valentina. Valentina and John began arguing that night because Valentina was partying while he was away. John questioned whether Valentina was with any men. Valentina refused to answer, believing he was jealous and suspicious. John eventually reminded Valentina to meet on the 20th. Before the meeting, Valentina planned to visit some beauty salons for eyelash and hair extensions to feel more confident. However, on the 20th, Valentina and John disagreed about the date and only clarified their plans when surveillance cameras recorded activities at Valentina's apartment that evening. According to the surveillance cameras, on the 20th, John helped Valentina pack her luggage at 6 p.m. when the two moved into their new home. Valentina also made a video call to her mother and said she would return after the trip. The video also showed Valentina with John Poulos, who had rented a car to transport Valentina's belongings. Valentina and John were caught on surveillance footage entering her new apartment at 7 p.m. Valentina and John were caught on camera engaging in some activities before heading home. It was Saturday, January 21st, at 1 a.m. They took a taxi to a nightclub in southeast New York where Valentina was performing. When they arrived at the nightclub around 4 a.m., Valentina immediately started working. John Poulos stayed with her while she got ready. At around 5 a.m., Valentina's performance ended, and they then went into the club's office to meet the owner, his wife, and a companion. Valentina and John left the club around 6 a.m. That was the last time Valentina's friends saw her. She walked out of the club smiling and seemingly fine. Valentina reached out to a friend by phone on Saturday and said she had no plans to go anywhere. She planned to stay home with John and perhaps go out to dinner or cook together. Valentina's last conversation with her friend was via video at 9 p.m. Valentina's mother, Laura Hidalgo, said her 13-year-old son was the last person to talk to Valentina via video. Valentina was lying in bed with John, and they appeared happy. The family has no further information about their situation. On January 21st, at 10:43 p.m., surveillance cameras in the building recorded Valentina and John. Valentina was looking out of the apartment door while John stood in front of it, looking pensive, pacing back and forth, and occasionally grimacing. John was again caught on camera on Sunday, January 22nd, at 9 a.m. This time, he left the room with 2 bags of trash, and Valentina was not seen. John then drove to the parking lot, picked up a silver car, and put the bags in the back seat. Next, he returned to the apartment, took 2 suitcases from the trunk, and brought them back to the apartment. At the apartment, a gray blanket was placed on top of the suitcase that John had taken out. It was 10 a.m. He put this suitcase on the cart for transport. A second bag was placed next to it, and in this bag was Valentina's head wrapped in a blanket. Before leaving, John observed the parking lot after parking and noticed that there was no one nearby. He also checked the area around the elevator to make sure no one was getting off. Then he quickly returned to the car and tried to lift the heavy suitcase into the trunk. Finally, he took the bag and put it in the car, then drove away. The surveillance camera recorded the car circulating at various points in the city. Around noon, John appeared to be looking for a safe place to dump the suitcase. The car then pulled into a parking lot and parked near a dumpster. At 3 p.m., John got out of the car, looked around to see if anyone was following him, then took out the suitcase, which appeared to be very heavy, and threw it into the dumpster. He then returned to the car, took out a bag, and placed it in the dumpster before closing the lid and exiting the parking lot. The car then traveled west until it reached El Dorado International Airport, where John was last seen at 4:30 p.m. The Department of Homeland Security announced a $1 million reward on Monday, January 23, for information leading to the arrest of John Tres Palacios. Colombian authorities sought Interpol's assistance in issuing an arrest warrant for John as he fled the country's borders. On January 24, Panamanian National Police arrested John at El Dorado International Airport, just as he was preparing to leave for Turkey. Colombian authorities quickly began the process of deporting John from the country after Valentina's death. More than 14 criminal investigators were involved in the investigation, gathering evidence to clarify the truth. The result of this investigation included the analysis of more than 300 hours of video footage from security cameras, conducted in cooperation with the public prosecutor's office. An important discovery in the case was the finding of Valentina's cell phone near El Dorado International Airport. A security guard happened to see the phone on the grass while walking near a gas station and picked it up. After realizing that the phone did not have a SIM card, he took it home with the intention of selling it, not knowing it belonged to Valentina. However, the security guard's wife called him after realizing that the photo of the girl on the phone's wallpaper matched the photos seen on social media, as well as the photo of the young woman found dead in the trash. Unfortunately, the phone was put up for sale and repackaged because someone wanted to buy it. After leaving the nightclub, John and Valentina's driver gave his statement. The driver had been assigned to take Valentina and John to a nightclub in the south of the city. When John stopped for a moment, Valentina got into the car and shouted that she had written something. When the driver looked at her, Valentina seemed uncertain, and the driver checked his phone. The driver discovered that Valentina had warned him that she was in danger in a Spanish text message to customer service. John then asked Valentina if she was okay. While the car was being driven, John and Valentina conversed in English. The driver asked them if they were bilingual, and they answered yes. When they left around 4 a.m. that same day, the driver went to the nightclub with the couple. He then knew nothing about the incident until he was informed of Valentina's death a few days later. In the WhatsApp version open on Valentina's computer, a friend of Valentina's in Caragana provided the prosecutor's office in Bogotá with conversations on Valentina's computer, which offered clues about what happened. One of the key pieces of evidence found in the investigation of Valentina's case was a discovery by one of her friends, who found the suitcase containing her body. This suitcase was believed to have been in the same location as Valentina's. The friend also said that on the day Valentina was in Bogotá, she received messages from John Poulos and several selfies of him with the luggage. The suitcase John was carrying was very similar to the one investigators found in the case, though the color was indistinguishable. While it is unclear why Valentina left the WhatsApp session open on her friend's computer, the messages helped investigators understand what happened at night when Valentina was killed. Forensic investigators determined that she died of asphyxiation due to being strangled with a rope. There were also signs of violence on her body. The autopsy revealed that Valentina died in her sleep. Criminologists came to this conclusion because she was wearing pajamas. All the evidence pointed to John Poulos being present at the scene. However, in the indictment, John did not admit responsibility for Valentina's death. He argued that his arrest in Panama was illegal because he did not have a lawyer to assist him. John was not proficient enough in Spanish, and a translator was not present during the 5-hour hearing. John was charged with involvement in Valentina's death and deleted his social media accounts. John Poulos was born on May 19, 1987, in Wisconsin, USA. He is married and has 3 children. However, he also has a criminal record related to violence against women, including a restraining order from his ex-wife. One of the women who had a relationship with John Poulos revealed that he frequently visited pornographic websites, spending up to 5 to 6 hours a day on them. She also commented that John often exhibited strange behavior, such as fantasizing in telling ghost stories. Another model who interacted with John Poulos on social media said that she knew him as being from Texas, USA. She stopped contacting him after he made a strange comment, including the words jealous and death. Specifically, John asked her, "If I was at a bar, would you be willing to talk to me?" When the woman refused, John replied, "There's a chance one of us will die of jealousy." The woman also said that although John donated money to her, she never chatted with him via video because his communication style was often erratic. It's important to note that John also displayed some suspicious behavior towards Valentina. He contacted Valentina on social media and began sending her money persistently and consistently. In this case, treating women like property was a red flag that the women overlooked, and they initially trusted him. John thought he could buy their trust with money from the start. Authorities investigating the case believe that John Poulos thought that the waste disposal system in Colombia was similar to that in the United States, where he lived. In his mind, the waste would settle in a container and eventually be disposed of. However, Poulos overlooked the fact that recyclers and people living on the streets regularly rummage through trash looking for items they can sell or use. John Poulos is currently being held in a separate cell in Bogota. The next step is to prove that all the evidence links him to the crime and to find the real motive behind this horrific murder in Colombia. The criminal code stipulates a prison sentence of up to 50 years for the crime John was charged with. John Poulos was subsequently sentenced to 42 years and 8 months in prison, was banned from approaching or attempting to contact the Tres Palacios family for 20 years, and was ordered to be deported from Colombia after serving his sentence. John's defense team said they would appeal the verdict. They argued that John was innocent of Valentina's murder. Valentina's situation is similar to many others. She thought she had found true love, but it turned out to be a mistake. Does anyone feel safe connecting with strangers on social media? Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Alyssa Burkett. Alyssa Burkett was born on December 31, 1995, in Mosquito, Texas, to Teresa and Burkett and Joshua Forey. She has 3 older sisters, Nikki, Madison, and Taylor, and 2 older brothers, Landon and Tyler. Alyssa showed creative talent from a young age. At the age of 7, she dreamed of becoming a fashion designer and even made her own clothes. Her grandfather, Russell Forey, a musician, encouraged Alyssa's passion, and at the age of 13, Alyssa decided to change her career path and pursue a career in law. Russell supported Alyssa's decision. After graduating from Royce City High School, Alyssa enrolled in a local college. When she was 18, Alyssa met a boy named Andrew Bird. He was 9 years older than her and seemed to be a mysterious bad boy. Despite her family's objections, Alyssa began pursuing Andrew. The relationship was unstable and complicated. Andrew did not work and relied on Alyssa for support. However, Andrew was very possessive, constantly monitoring Alyssa's every move. Her friends advised her to break up with Andrew many times, but Alyssa did not listen. In January 2019, 23-year-old Alyssa discovered that she was pregnant with Andrew's child. This unexpected pregnancy took Alyssa by surprise and forced her to rethink her future plans. Alyssa suspected that Andrew would not be a good father in the future, so Alyssa decided to break up with Andrew and raise her daughter on her own. Alyssa dropped out of college because of her pregnancy. On December 31, 2019, her 24th birthday, Alyssa gave birth to a healthy baby girl and named her Willow. Despite the challenges ahead, Alyssa is still trying her best to be a good mother. Alyssa often shares family photos on social media platforms. People close to Alyssa describe her as outspoken, energetic, kind, and has a bright smile. Alyssa has worked hard to earn money to take care of her daughter. She is working at Green Tree, a residential real estate company. With the support of her family, especially her grandparents, Alyssa tried to give her daughter a peaceful childhood while staying away from Andrew because she considered him unreliable. However, Andrew refused to give up. He initiated a fierce legal battle to gain custody of Willow, asserting that Andrew would achieve his goals at all costs and nothing could stop him. In April 2020, just 4 months after Willow was born, a woman named Holly Elkins, 22, appeared in Andrew's life. Holly Elkins quickly moved in with Andrew and began planning their life together. Holly Elkins saw Alyssa as a rival and sought to eliminate her from Andrew's life. Alyssa considered herself the best mother for Willow. She began to feel the growing threat from Andrew and his fiancée Holly Elkins. Friends advised Alyssa to be cautious and prepare for the worst. Little did Alyssa know that her life was about to be seriously threatened. As soon as Andrew Bird and Holly Elkins began dating, they immediately launched a plan to bring Alyssa down. Their goal was to ruin Alyssa's reputation and take away Alyssa's custody of their child in order to gain custody of Willow. In text messages, Holly Elkins openly expressed her desire to eliminate Alyssa. Holly Elkins wrote to Andrew that Alyssa was controlling him, making him prioritize Alyssa, and demanding that Andrew show subservience to Alyssa. Holly Elkins viciously criticized Alyssa, calling her a liar, stupid, and a bad mother. Holly Elkins encouraged Andrew to take action against Alyssa, claiming that Alyssa was hindering their family happiness with Willow. Holly Elkins and Andrew installed a GPS tracking device on Alyssa's car to monitor her every move. Holly Elkins then anonymously called 911, falsely reporting that Alyssa was driving erratically in order to discredit her with the police. On another occasion, Holly Elkins went to the police station and falsely accused Alyssa of attacking her. To prove this story, Holly Elkins scratched her chest. The couple also hired a private investigator to find evidence against Alyssa and her new boyfriend. However, the detective did not find any evidence that could incriminate Alyssa, but Holly Elkins and Andrew did not give up. In September 2020, Holly Elkins and Andrew hid drugs and unregistered weapons in Alyssa's car and anonymously reported that Alyssa was trafficking drugs from her car. During the interrogation, Alyssa cried and insisted that she had nothing to do with drugs and immediately suspected Andrew of having a role in the plot, with the aim of discrediting Alyssa in the eyes of the police. Unfortunately, she could not prove it. Holly Elkins and Andrew planned every detail of the crime. On September 10, 2020, Holly Elkins went to a sports store with Andrew. There, Andrew bought a black raincoat with cash, and Holly Elkins helped Andrew choose the right outfit for the crime plan. On September 14th, Holly Elkins went to a pharmacy and bought dark foundation and other cosmetics to disguise Andrew. On September 19th, Holly Elkins and Andrew stopped by a hardware store where they bought shotgun shells and a large Camillus knife. Both the gun and knife would be used by Andrew to take revenge on his daughter's mother, Alyssa. During the last week of September, Holly Elkins texted Andrew frequently, urging him to carry out the plan. Holly Elkins stressed that they needed to resolve the issue. Holly Elkins knew that their relationship would be in danger if Andrew did not act. Upon receiving the text messages, Andrew put his plan into action. The search history on Andrew's phone showed that he had begun researching how to remove gunpowder residue from his hands after shooting, indicating that Andrew did not want to leave any traces. 6 days before the attack, Alyssa and Andrew purchased a used black Ford Expedition. Andrew told the seller that he would use the car to supervise a school project. On the morning of October 2nd, Andrew disguised himself as another man. Andrew wore a black raincoat and parked his Ford Expedition SUV near Alyssa's home. Through text messages provided by Holly Elkin, Andrew learned Alyssa's daily routine and determined where Andrew could find Alyssa. On the morning of October 2nd, 2020, Alyssa dropped off her 1-year-old daughter, Willow, at her grandmother's house while she was on her way to work at Green Tree Home Management in Carrollton, as she did every day. Alyssa parked her car in front of the office around 9 a.m. and was about to enter the house when a black SUV sped toward her car. Andrew, dressed in a black hoodie, wearing a mask and holding a handgun, attacked Alyssa. She had no chance to react before he approached her and shot her in the head through the window. Alyssa dropped to the steering wheel, her face and hair covered in blood. Despite her serious injuries, Alyssa still had enough strength to open the car door and tried to crawl toward the office door. Alyssa was trying to call for help, but her body was weak and covered in blood. Despite the critical situation, Alyssa showed incredible willpower in her final moments. Andrew quickly returned when he saw movement. He pulled a large hunting knife from his coat and attacked Alyssa, who was on the ground. Andrew grabbed Alyssa's hair and brutally stabbed her multiple times in the neck, chest, and abdomen, totaling at least 13 wounds. Alyssa died on the spot from these severe injuries. When Alyssa's coworkers ran out to the parking lot after hearing her screams, they found Alyssa lying in a pool of blood with her throat slit. They attempted to revive Alyssa using CPR but were unsuccessful. By this time, Andrew had escaped in his black SUV, leaving the bloody weapon at the scene. Witnesses described the attacker as a tall, muscular man dressed all in black with a mask or hood. Many people mistook him for an African American at the time of the attack. According to Holly Elkins, she was at home with Andrew's daughter, Willow, giving her an alibi. Holly Elkins later told police that Andrew was believed to be with her the entire time. The brutal murder, which happened so brazenly in a public place, shocked the people of Carrollton. They were puzzled about the motive for this dangerous crime. However, Alyssa's loved ones and friends immediately suspected Andrew Bird. They knew about the ongoing dispute between Alyssa and Andrew over the custody of their child. Alyssa's mother, holding back tears, reported her suspicions about Andrew to the police. She shared with the police about Andrew's threats and harassment of Alyssa, as well as the long legal battle for custody of her granddaughter. According to her, Andrew had repeatedly stated that Alyssa would not be allowed to raise their daughter Willow. The investigation into Alyssa Burkett's murder was launched. At first, Alyssa's colleagues provided details about the attacker's appearance. This man, despite wearing a mask, was tall, muscular, appeared to be muscular, and some even thought he was African American. The testimony of Alyssa's loved ones made her ex-boyfriend, Andrew Bird, the main subject of the investigation. Alyssa's new boyfriend also said that Andrew had given them detailed addresses, even though no one had told Andrew. Based on this information, police began tracking Andrew's location in Rowlett. Not long after, they saw Andrew, along with his daughter Willow, packing up to leave for an extended period of time. When Andrew got into the car, the police stopped and searched the unmarked car. During the search, they found men's boots cut into pieces and soaked in drugs. Police discovered items related to camouflage makeup, napkins with makeup on them. When police searched Andrew's home, they found a lot of evidence. They discovered the pin for a GPS tracking device that Andrew had attached to Alyssa and her new boyfriend's car. Police also found an automatic silencer for a handgun and a cache of weapons. And police also found the phone that Andrew used when he called the police to report the discovery of drugs in Alyssa's car. Police confiscated 3 of Andrew's phones. When police checked the search history of one of those cell phones, they found questions about how to disassemble a gun barrel on his hand. This suggests that Andrew was trying to cover his tracks. Police found an abandoned black Ford Expedition SUV on the outskirts of town. When they examined the cabin, forensic experts found Alyssa's blood and fake beard hairs with Andrew's DNA. The dealer confirmed that Andrew had bought the car and paid in cash. Forensic tests showed that Alyssa's fatal bullet was fired from a .45 caliber handgun found in the car. Andrew's fingerprints were also found on the handle of the hunting knife. Additionally, Andrew's handwriting appeared on GPS devices and in calls to police. It appears that the prosecution has assembled evidence of Andrew Bird's guilt. However, the complaint also seeks to hold his co-defendant, Holly Elkins, accountable. Email exchanges between Andrew and Holly Elkins revealed Holly Elkins' role in planning and inciting the crime. The investigation spanned several months, during which time the prosecution assembled strong evidence tying Andrew and Holly Elkins to the brutal death of Alyssa Burkett. In June 2022, the Alyssa Burkett murder trial began, nearly 2 years after the tragedy. The 2 defendants, 35-year-old Andrew Bird and 23-year-old Holly Elkins, were charged with stalking, conspiracy, and first-degree murder. A key witness was Christopher Mayo, Alyssa's new boyfriend at the time of her death. Christopher Mayo told the jury what had happened over the course of several months, including the arguments and troubles they had endured. Christopher Mayo recalled numerous occasions when Alyssa expressed to him her fear that Andrew would harm her. Christopher Mayo witnessed Andrew's frequent threats over the phone, along with lies that damaged Alyssa's reputation with social services and the police. In addition, Christopher Mayo believed that the person directly directing all of the above actions was Holly Elkins. Alyssa's co-workers and friends shared her grief. Before her death, Alyssa shared with her co-workers and friends her fear of Andrew and the feeling of being constantly watched. Alyssa even told a friend that if anything happened to her, Andrew would be the one to do it. Forensic experts presented the jury with a large amount of physical evidence linking Andrew Bird to the crime scene. The evidence included Andrew's DNA and fingerprints on the murder weapon, as well as gunpowder residue and camouflage in his home and car. And evidence of email exchanges between Andrew and Holly Elkins, indicating they had planned the crime together. Andrew's defense argued that his actions were unintentional and not premeditated. The defense also stressed that Andrew was under a lot of pressure and stress from the protracted legal battle, which had affected Andrew's emotions. However, evidence from the correspondence and the careful planning of the act refutes these theories. Meanwhile, Holly Elkins denied any involvement, offering a plea, but her testimony was also full of lies. Holly Elkins' text messages incited Andrew to take action against her rival Alyssa. In May 2023, the judge handed down the verdict. Andrew Bird was sentenced to 43 years in prison. Holly Elkins was sentenced to 20 years in prison for being an accessory to a crime. The courtroom erupted in applause as justice was finally served. Alyssa Burkett's killers got what they deserved. Alyssa family, in pain and tears, expressed deep gratitude to the journalists and the jury. Although the killer faces a harsh sentence, Alyssa Burkett's family cannot make up for their terrible loss. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ariel Castro. Ariel Castro was born in 1960 on July 10th in the city of Yauco in Puerto Rico. Ariel was the third child in a poor family of 4 children, including parents Liliana Rodriguez and Pedro Castro, and sisters O'Neill, Pedro, and older sister Bonita. Ariel's family barely made ends meet and his parents were constantly arguing. Before Ariel went to school, his parents divorced. His mother Liliana took care of all the children. Now Liliana had almost nothing left to feed her children. In desperation, Liliana and her children decided to move to the United States and settled for a while in southeastern Pennsylvania in the city of Reading. However, they soon moved to the neighboring state of Ohio and eventually settled in the city of Cleveland. Soon after, Ariel's father Pedro Castro also moved to Cleveland with his new wife and their children. Pedro Castro lived near Liliana and her children. Liliana later married, and Ariel soon had 4 more siblings. Ariel attended Lincoln West High School in Cleveland, graduating in 1978. In addition, Ariel also studied music and attended church regularly with her mother and siblings in a traditional Catholic family. As a teenager, Ariel met a young girl named Grimilda Figueroa, who lived next door to Castro. The two became friends while attending school, and Ariel and Grimilda later began dating. After saving money, Ariel and Grimilda decided to move to a house on Seymour Avenue in southwest Cleveland. The 2-story, 1,300 square foot house was built in 1890 and has been remodeled several times. Inside, there are 4 bedrooms, a dining room, a bathroom, and a spacious basement. However, since moving into the new house, Ariel regularly beats Grimilda and humiliates her morally and physically. Grimilda is still naive at this time and thinks that the situation will improve after the wedding and the birth of the child. However, as time goes by, the situation only gets worse. Grimilda tries not to let anyone know about the terrible things that are happening in her life. Grimilda hides her injuries under her clothes and makes up excuses for the injuries that cannot be hidden. In 1993, Ariel beat his wife so brutally that Grimilda suffered broken ribs, nose, and both arms from falling down the stairs after being pushed by Ariel. However, Grimilda steadfastly refused to report the incident to the police. The incident was covered up. Ariel repeatedly beat Grimilda in the mid-1990s. On one occasion, Ariel caused Grimilda a serious head injury that resulted in a blood clot and a tumor that could not be surgically removed. Ariel was arrested but released just a day later. By the late 90s, Grimilda was tired of the constant beatings and living in fear. Grimilda finally decided to file for divorce, took away the appliances, and moved out of the house. Grimilda won custody of all 4 of their children, Arlene, Antonio, Angie, and Amelia. However, Grimilda's nightmare did not end there. Ariel began to pursue Grimilda for money and threatened her to return to him. Realizing that Grimilda could not handle it on her own, Grimilda finally decided to report to the police to get a restraining order against Ariel. In late April 2012, Grimilda suffered complications related to an inoperable tumor caused by a head injury. Grimilda's children were old enough to care for themselves and live their own lives, so they did not need a guardian. However, the children still maintained contact with their father Ariel. Back in the early 2000s, Ariel lived alone in a 2-story house on Seymour Avenue. Ariel worked as a school bus driver and had a passion for playing the guitar. Ariel often performed at city festivals in Latin bands. His neighbors often spoke highly of him, praising his hospitality and kind personality. However, there were many strange things in Ariel's actions that went unnoticed. That he was prosecuted several times for traffic violations while driving a school bus. He had speeding and dangerously making U-turns, for which he was fined and even suspended for a while until he was fired in early 2013 for an act that threatened the lives and health of his young passengers. Additionally, Ariel frequently changed bands because Ariel was kicked out for being late, disrupting rehearsals and concerts. Another strange thing is that after his divorce from Grimilda, he never invited anyone to his house, although Ariel often invited neighbors to barbecues in his backyard. It's hard to say how dangerous this smiling, kindly-faced Ariel was. Michelle Knight was Ariel Castro's first victim. In 2002, on August 23, Ariel decided to kidnap Michelle Knight, then 21 years old. Michelle Knight was born in 1981 and came to Cleveland. Michelle was a frequent runaway and had a history with the police. After becoming a single mother, Michelle faced the risk of losing custody of her 2-year-old child. On the day of the incident, Michelle visited a relative's house and then had to go to court, where the issue of regaining custody of her 2-year-old child had just been decided. While walking down the street, Michelle saw Ariel Castro driving up and offering her a ride. Since Michelle knew the nearby school bus driver, she didn't suspect Ariel and decided to get in his car. On the way, Ariel tells Michelle that he is taking care of puppies at home and invites Michelle to visit them and help Ariel find homes for the puppies. Michelle agrees, but as soon as she enters Ariel's house, he changes completely. Ariel becomes violent and begins hitting Michelle repeatedly. Ariel then chains her up and takes her to the basement. Over the next few days, Ariel starved Michelle and denied her water. Michelle endured constant beatings and abuse. She could not even get up and had to beg Ariel to let her go, promising not to tell anyone about it. When Michelle's mother reported her daughter missing to the police, for years the police did not prioritize the case and allocated limited resources to the investigation. Michelle's family searched for the girl themselves by contacting neighbors, friends, and concerned people. They also asked for help from Ariel, who helped post flyers around the city with Michelle's picture. However, no one knew that Michelle was being held in Ariel's basement. Ariel's second character was Amanda Berry. This girl was kidnapped in the spring of 2003. Amanda was a young girl who lived near Ariel and worked at a local restaurant. She was born on April 22, 1986 and was about to celebrate her 17th birthday. However, on April 21, 2003, Amanda mysteriously disappeared. After her shift, Amanda called home and told her sister that she would be home soon. As Amanda left the restaurant and headed to the bus stop, Ariel drove up to her and offered to give Amanda a ride home. Amanda accepted. Amanda knew Ariel's son because they had been in the same class for many years. So Amanda trusted Ariel and agreed to go with him. However, Ariel lied to her along the way, saying that Ariel needed help. When Amanda entered Ariel's house, Amanda was trapped. Ariel raped her in public, then took Amanda to the basement. There, she met Michelle, who had been kidnapped and held captive for months. Amanda was also attacked, abused, and starved for days until Amanda's body was too weak to resist. A massive search was launched after Amanda went missing. Her disappearance was widely reported in the media and Amanda's parents appeared on popular television shows such as Oprah Winfrey and Montel Williams. They shared their story and urged anyone with information about Amanda's whereabouts to contact them immediately. On one show, famous psychic Sylvia Brown was invited on. After viewing a photo of Amanda, she said that the girl had died and her body was in the water. The words troubled Amanda's parents, but the mother, Louise Miller, continued to search for her daughter until she died in March 2006 of a heart attack. In 2012, a criminal named Robert Wolford suddenly confessed to Amanda's murder and offered to show them where her body was buried. Robert led police to a vacant lot in West Cleveland, claiming that he had buried Amanda there. However, a lengthy search failed to uncover any trace. Robert was later found to have lied for fame and television, leading to his being sentenced to an additional 5 years in prison for perjury and obstructing justice. In April 2004. This time, Ariel chose Gina De Jesus, a 14-year-old girl in his daughter's class. Ariel met Gina and another girlfriend after school. After chatting for a while, the two girls decided to go home separately. When they reached the corner of West 105th Street, Ariel met Gina and offered to take Gina home. Since Gina had known Ariel since childhood, having long been the father of her best friend, Gina got into Ariel's car without suspecting anything. Although it was daytime, there were no witnesses to the kidnapping because the streets were deserted at that time. In addition, Gina took the initiative to get into Ariel's car, so there was no easily detectable conflict. The story of Gina's disappearance was aired on Fox TV's America's Most Wanted and was re-aired twice in 2005 and 2006. Ariel also posed as a volunteer looking for missing girls. When she brought Gina home, Ariel treated Gina similarly to Michelle and Amanda. Abused, sexually assaulted, and locked in the basement. It is believed that the kidnapping was carried out by a middle-aged Hispanic man. Was seen by a passerby. There was even a sketch that looked very similar to Ariel. During the 10 years of their captivity, Ariel constantly abused her victims. They were often starved, attempting to break their spirits and destroy their self-esteem. Severe punishments were also carried out if the three girls did not comply. Michelle, the oldest captive, suffered the most. Ariel would not spare her and would often beat Michelle to intimidate the other girls, forcing them to obey without asking any questions. After years of captivity in the dark and damp basement, Ariel moved them to a room on the second floor, which overlooked the courtyard. During her captivity, Michelle became pregnant at least 5 times. However, each time she showed signs of pregnancy, Ariel brutally attempted to terminate the pregnancy, starving Michelle and kicking her in the stomach until Michelle miscarried. After one brutal torture, Michelle almost died from severe blood loss. Despite this, Ariel remained completely indifferent and refused to let her call a rescue vehicle. The girls were not allowed to bathe more than once a week. To use the toilet, they had only a bucket of water, which Ariel rarely emptied. Ariel only fed the girls once a day but constantly beat and abused them. One day, Ariel gives the girls a puppy, but a week later, Ariel brutally kills the dog in front of them as punishment for Michelle's disobedience. Gina, in 2006, Amanda realizes she is pregnant and is horrified by the image of Ariel beating her to induce a miscarriage. Ariel this time let Amanda get pregnant and give birth. In preparation for the birth, he bought a special inflatable float. In December 2006, Amanda gave birth to a daughter named Jocelyn. Although the baby was born weak, she was lucky to survive. As Jocelyn grew older, the girls began to care for her and create a close environment for her. This helped them temporarily forget the difficult situation they were in. Ariel also changed significantly after having his daughters. Ariel began giving the 3 girls he kidnapped small gifts and sometimes letting them out into the yard with Jocelyn, but always under close supervision. Jocelyn was developing well, speaking clearly, and being taught to read, write, and count by her mother. Outwardly, she appeared healthy, well cared for and well fed. Despite being imprisoned for years under Ariel's relentless control, the victims attempted to escape many times, but each time they were brutally punished, but the girls never gave up hope. However, on May 6, 2013, Ariel left the house and forgot to lock one of the interior doors. This gave Amanda an opportunity. She left the room and went to the window that looked out onto the street. When Amanda saw a neighbor walking past the house, Amanda began banging and screaming at the window. A man heard a strange noise and stopped, thinking someone needed help. Another neighbor also heard the screams and decided to call emergency services. While waiting for the police to arrive, the men broke the lock on the front door and helped Amanda and her young daughter escape. When the police arrived, Amanda told them that her name was Amanda Berry and that she had been kidnapped 10 years ago. Amanda also said that 2 other kidnapped girls were being held in a house, in other apartments. All 3 were rescued and taken to hospital the same day. Amanda, Her younger daughter Jocelyn and Gina were not in critical condition, but Michelle had suffered severe physical and mental damage from the constant abuse. Michelle lost hearing in one ear and almost lost sight in her left eye. Many of Michelle's bones were bent and would not heal, requiring plastic surgery to restore the shape of her disfigured face. After the trauma and forced abortion, Michelle was unable to have children. When police received a report of 3 missing girls and a baby found in Ariel's home, Ariel Castro was arrested in a McDonald's parking lot just an hour later. Ariel's brothers, O'Neill and Pedro, were also arrested on suspicion of involvement, as they had been frequent visitors to Ariel's home. However, they were quickly released due to lack of evidence linking them to the case, as the victims had confirmed. Ariel was charged with forcible kidnapping, assault, battery, forcible confinement, cruelty, and taking the life of an unborn child. Ariel could have received a common law conviction. However, the prosecution required a death sentence. Ariel agreed to cooperate with the investigation and pleaded guilty. Ariel would recount all the events that took place in his home. In return, he would not be sentenced to death but instead to life in prison. Surprisingly, Ariel recalls in great detail the days of kidnapping the girls and bringing them into his home. Ariel recounted all the torture and abuse he had inflicted on his victims, but blamed the girls for unwittingly agreeing to get into Ariel's car and condemned himself to such a fate. On August 1, 2013, Ariel was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. On July 9, 2013, Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina De Jesus began a new life after being released from the Insanity's custody. After his conviction, Ariel was transferred to a rehabilitation center in Orient, Ohio, where he was closely monitored. However, on September 3, 2013, Ariel was found dead in his cell. At the time, Ariel was 53 years old. Ariel Castro's family members have apologized to the victims and their families. Michelle Knight wrote a book titled Life After Darkness: Finding Healing and Happiness After the Cleveland Kidnapping in 2018. Gina De Jesus also published a memoir titled Hope, a memoir of survival in Cleveland. There are also multiple documentary projects and 2 feature films about the terrifying kidnapping mission. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Annie Tayan. Annie Tayan was born on May 1, 1965, in Charleston, South Carolina, and was raised by her mother. She had a strong love for life, dancing, fun, and the simple pleasures it brought. Annie dreamed of having a family and considered motherhood her greatest goal. She began this journey very early, giving birth to her first son, Jimia, at the age of 18, followed by her second son, Sean, just a year later. By the age of 20, she welcomed her third child, a daughter named Shane. Unfortunately, shortly after Shane was born, the children's father left Annie, became uninvolved in their lives, and abandoned the family. Annie faced the hardships of raising 3 young children in a rented apartment in Maine. In 1987, when her youngest daughter Shane was only 6 months old, Annie, 22, met Michael Palin, 32, a Navy officer stationed on the aircraft carrier Bramby. Their meeting took place in Portland, Maine, where Michael's ship was docked, and he felt an immediate attraction to Annie during their waterfront encounter. Michael lived in Charleston, South Carolina, and was a respected member of the Navy, known for his work as a computer systems operator. He was actively involved in military operations and had received several awards. Annie was fascinated by Michael's naval career and quickly fell in love with him, telling a friend that she had found a man she felt was truly worthy of her love. After dating for a few months, Annie and Michael decided to move in together, creating a family with 2 sons and a daughter. Unfortunately, their life together took a tragic turn when a fire broke out in their apartment. Annie was away at the time, leaving Michael with the children. Michael, along with Jemia and Sean, were able to escape, but Shane, who was too young to walk, was left behind. When Annie returned, she tried to enter the burning apartment to save Shane, but the neighbors prevented her. The loss of Shane in the fire had a profound effect on Annie. After the devastating fire, Annie and her sons moved to her mother's house in Portland. Meanwhile, Michael focused on his work and decided to stay in the barracks. A few months after the move, a disturbing event occurred near Annie's mother's house. A shed in the backyard was set on fire. The police quickly traced the source of the fire and found a lighter engraved with the name Bramby, the ship on which Michael served. This discovery made Michael the prime suspect in the arson case. However, despite the incriminating evidence, the police were unable to link him to the crime due to insufficient evidence. After the second fire, Maine child welfare authorities discovered that Annie's sons were living in unsafe conditions with her. As a result, they made the decision to remove Jemia and Sean from her custody and place them in the care of the Department of Social Services. This decision devastated Annie, who tried her best to regain custody of her children. But she was unsuccessful and lost custody of her sons. When Michael's ship returned to Charleston, South Carolina, he settled into a rental apartment and reunited with Annie. Despite their complicated past, Annie decided to move in with him in Goose Creek, a suburb of Charleston. However, while there, Annie discovered a photo of Michael wearing a wedding ring, revealing that he was married. When confronted, Michael confessed to Annie that he had been married but was now divorced. He explained that his ex-wife, Dawn Breeze, and their 3 children lived with his mother in Savannah, Georgia. Although Michael assured Annie that he was no longer in a relationship with Dawn, Annie was deeply troubled by this revelation. She considered leaving him but ultimately chose to stay, seeing Michael as a partner with whom to start a family. However, their living situation became negative. Michael became increasingly hostile and disrespectful to Annie. As she considered moving back to her mother's home, she discovered she was pregnant. This unexpected news kept her from leaving and brought her joy as she anticipated the birth of another child. In October 1989, Annie gave birth to her 4th daughter, Jade. Although she knew Jade could never replace her lost daughter, she felt that Jade filled an important void in her heart. In the month after Jade was born, Michael's treatment of Annie worsened. He began publicly insulting and humiliating her. Annie confided to a friend that she feared that if she tried to leave, Michael would relentlessly pursue her. His controlling behavior increased. He locked Annie in their apartment. When he left for work, he would disconnect his phone and take it with him. Annie became increasingly concerned about his actions. Annie, feeling distressed, called her best friend Katie French. During the call, Annie revealed that she was planning to leave Michael. However, Michael threatened that if she left, their daughter Jade would stay with him and Annie would never see her again. Overwhelmed, Annie cried and begged Katie to come immediately to help her and Jade. Unfortunately, Katie was busy and unable to help. Instead, she sent Annie money for a bus ticket, hoping that it would help her escape and return to Portland. This urgent conversation turned out to be their last. 2 days later, on November 7, 1989, Katie tried to contact Annie but received no response. A few days later, Michael informed Katie that Annie had left on November 6, taking her belongings and heading to an unknown destination. Katie expected Annie to contact her from her new home, but after 2 weeks of no news, she grew increasingly worried. By Thanksgiving, November 24, Annie had been out of contact for 20 days. Worried about Annie's safety, Katie tried to contact Annie's friends and acquaintances, but no one had any information about her. When Katie tried to report Annie Tayan, 24, missing to the police, she was told that she could not file a formal report because she was not a family member. As months passed without any updates on Annie, Katie finally contacted Michael's mother. Katie was shocked to learn that Annie's youngest daughter, Jade, was living with Michael's mother. The news confirmed Katie's deepest fears. She was certain that Annie would never willingly leave her daughter behind. Shortly after the disturbing events, Michael Palin moved to the naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. He did not appear to be concerned about her disappearance. Michael did not contact the police or begin a search for Annie. The official search began after Annie's mother reported her missing. Initially, the investigation focused on her husband Michael Palin, who quickly became the prime suspect. Michael explained that on the morning of November 6th, he woke up to find Annie had left, leaving their daughter with him. Michael said that the night before, Annie had mentioned that she wanted to end their relationship. Michael did not look for Annie because he thought their relationship was over and felt no need to contact her any further. He also claimed that he was unaware of Annie's disappearance. After searching the couple's rented apartment, the police found no evidence. Annie Tayan's case seemed to have stalled, with no further search for her. Questions about her current location, whether she was still alive, and the possible motives of any kidnappers remained unanswered. The only known fact is that the last person confirmed to have seen her was her partner, Michael. For 4 long years, there was no news or sign of Annie. Her best friend, Katie French, was the only one actively looking for her. She worked tirelessly on the investigation and her phone bill alone cost her approximately $16,000. Katie hired a private investigator and was determined to continue the search. She contacted various organizations to gather information about Michael's background. Katie was convinced that Michael was dangerous and untrustworthy. She was terrified of him, knowing that if Michael learned of her ties to the police, it could put her in danger. In 1993, Annie's case was transferred to the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, marking a major change in the investigation. Naval Criminal Investigative Service agents began a comprehensive review of the case from the beginning. They found Michael Palin, who was staying at Pearl Harbor Naval Base in Hawaii. When Coast Guard agents attempted to speak with him about Annie's disappearance, Michael agreed to speak only if his attorney was present. He then completely stopped cooperating with the investigation and refused to provide any further assistance or information. The Coast Guard agents gathered all available information about Annie's disappearance and contacted the South Carolina Police Department. They asked the department to cross-reference their records with any unidentified bodies, noting that Annie had given birth just a month before her disappearance. South Carolina police then reported a case involving a dead woman who had also given birth a month before her death. They provided a sketch of what the woman looked like, shocking the Coast Guard agents. They believed they had found Annie Tayan. The discovery revealed a brutal murder, with her body found next to a highway in Jasper County, South Carolina, about 100 miles from her home with Michael. The crime scene photos were horrifying. Annie's face was severely crushed, and her skull was broken into 124 pieces, requiring nearly 500 hours of detailed reconstruction. Her body was found in a duffel bag that had been doused with gasoline and set on fire. The burning bag was discovered at 6 a.m. on November 7, 1989, the same time Katie French noticed Annie had stopped answering her calls. Annie was identified by comparing her dental records to those of the unidentified woman. After Annie's body was found, Michael became the prime suspect in her murder. The Coast Guard developed a detailed investigation plan, starting with a review of his financial transactions. They discovered that on the day Annie went missing, Michael had made a credit card purchase about 25 miles south of where her body was found. Additionally, his phone records showed that on the morning of November 6th, he called his mother's home in Savannah twice, once at 4:35 a.m. and again at 5:17 a.m. Based on this evidence, police believe that Michael killed Annie in their apartment, then moved her body and left it on the side of the road, where he burned it. Naval Criminal Investigative Service agents targeted Michael Palin's ex-wife, Dawn Breeze. At the time of Annie's death, Dawn was still married to Michael and lived in his mother's home in Savannah. After Annie went missing, Dawn divorced Michael and began moving around the state several times, apparently trying to avoid someone or something. Agents eventually tracked her down to Miami, Florida, in the summer of 1995, nearly 6 years after Annie Tain's murder. When they found Dawn, she was making a living through psychic activities. During a visit to her workplace to discuss Annie's disappearance, Dawn responded surprisingly calmly. She asked how long the conversation would last, saying she wanted to eat if it lasted. This response surprised the agents, as they had expected a more emotional response regarding Annie. However, Dawn remained calm throughout their discussion. During the 10-hour interrogation, Dawn's story initially matched Michael's. She said that when she visited Michael's apartment, he told her that his mistress had left and that he planned to raise their daughter on his own. However, Dawn was silent, looked down, and said that she wanted to tell the truth. Her next speech was emotionless and tearless as she shared what she had kept secret for 6 years. Dawn revealed that Michael had called her to his Charleston apartment early one morning. She discovered Annie's body on the living room floor. Michael told Dawn to go into the bedroom to see his daughter. At the time, Dawn and Michael were still legally married and had 3 children together. Michael admitted to Dawn that he had had an affair with Annie, which resulted in the birth of a daughter. He begged her to accept the child and help him raise his daughter. Dawn claimed that rather than face a custody battle with Annie, Michael chose to kill to gain custody. Dawn added, on the night of November 5th and 6th, 1989, Michael and Annie went to bed after having sex. After a while, Annie fell asleep. At this point, Michael violently attacked her with a crowbar. Their daughter, Jade, was lying next to Annie in bed during the horrific incident. Michael continued to beat Annie on the head with increasing brutality. Despite her attempts to fight back, Annie eventually died of her injuries on that same bed. Michael contacted his wife, Dawn, asking her to come immediately. He then placed Annie's body in a large bag and put it in the trunk of his car, where he also had a can of gasoline. He drove with Dawn and their daughter Jade in the back seat for about 100 miles. When they reached a quiet area on the side of the road, Michael took Annie's body out of the trunk, doused it with gasoline, and set it on fire. After making sure the fire was burning well, he quickly returned to the car and drove Dawn and Jade back to his mother's house in Savannah. Dawn's revelation was crucial evidence in the investigation. The police asked Dawn to make a recorded phone call to Michael to talk about Annie's murder. Dawn agreed and called Michael, expressing her concern about the discovery and identification of Annie's body. Michael's response was, no, they didn't. During the call, Dawn told Michael that blood had been found in their old apartment and that Naval Criminal Investigative Service agents suspected they were involved in a murder. She encouraged Michael to come up with an explanation for the blood. Michael responded, okay, we need to work together and come up with a solution. Although he did not admit anything directly, his demeanor showed that he understood the seriousness of the situation. At the end of the conversation, Michael warned Dawn to be careful with her phone calls and assured her that they would work together to resolve the situation. Naval Criminal Investigative Service agents took Dawn to the crime scene to search for any remaining evidence. To protect her identity and ensure her safety as a cooperating witness, they disguised her before arriving at the apartment. Dawn carefully described and demonstrated where Annie's body was and the sequence of events. She pointed out a spot near the wall and baseboard where a significant amount of blood had seeped into the carpet and concrete floor below. Since Michael had moved out, the landlord had replaced and cleaned the carpet several times, which explained the lack of visible evidence. However, when the police used a special chemical on the concrete floor, a large purple stain appeared, indicating the presence of protein and confirming Dawn's account of where Annie's body had been. Despite the blood on the concrete, the Naval Criminal Investigative Service agents had difficulty confirming that the substance was blood, so they continued to search for more physical evidence. Dawn pointed to a nightstand containing a television next to the bed where Annie had been killed. She noted that blood had splattered on the television during the murder, and Michael had said that it needed a thorough cleaning. He had then disposed of the television, possibly selling it rather than throwing away a working appliance, given his frugal habits. Finding the television was difficult, but the agents were determined to find it. At this point, Michael Palin realized that the Naval Criminal Investigative Service was watching him, especially after a phone call with his ex-wife, Dawn. Naval Criminal Investigative Service agents were concerned that Michael might flee, or that he might threaten witnesses, harm them. On October 11, 1995, Michael attempted to escape, but was quickly apprehended and taken into custody by police. While Michael Palin was in police custody on suspicion of murder, Naval Criminal Investigative Service agents worked tirelessly to find and interview all the residents of the apartment complex where the murders took place in November 1989. Their efforts were rewarded when they spoke with a neighbor who said he had purchased a television from Michael. Amazingly, the television was still working and in the neighbor's home. The police quickly confiscated the television and sent it to the FBI lab for forensic analysis. This investigation led to a crucial discovery. Analysis found 11 blood stains inside the speaker. These blood samples were later compared to Annie's DNA, providing crucial evidence in the murder case. At this point in the case, Michael's attorney announced that he was willing to plead guilty, but only if the death penalty was removed from consideration. The prosecutor was not pleased with this development, but military law required such a plea bargain to be negotiated at trial. Michael admitted his guilt, recounting the details of his crimes objectively, his account showing no signs of remorse or empathy. As a result, he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. He was also dishonorably discharged from the Navy. Dawn Breeze, who knew about her husband's crimes and remained silent for more than 6 years, escaped legal consequences thanks to her crucial confession to the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, which greatly aided the investigation. Annie's children now know the truth about their mother's tragic fate and understand that she did not abandon them.